Hi everyone, welcome to the French Press Bookworks Author Roundtable. So today we're joined by Mike Hansen, Scott Thompson, and Ralph Pullins. I am Dion Abulela, the editor-in-chief of French Press Bookworks. Today on this roundtable we're going to be talking about an article that came from The Independent, which is a UK newspaper. And the gist of this article reflects a pretty lengthy blog that the headmaster of the Acorn School wrote about how YA books can contribute to mental illness and they actually damage the brains of young children, especially if it's a book like Harry Potter, Game of Thrones, The Hunger Games, etc. So he actually said that these type of YA sci-fi fantasy books are mythical and frightening texts that he believes contain deeply insensitive and addictive material, and that children should instead be introduced to old-fashioned values of traditional literature. So we actually sat down and talked about this last week, and I messaged.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, so I think we could probably go ahead and continue to talk about it a little bit. About the article, do you have that article with you, Mike? I think you might have it in front of you, where you can. I think you had some quotes from it last time. And I know I have it as well. If we need to pull it up.
Just give me 1 second. I'll pull it up, and then that'll give you guys a chance to introduce yourselves.
Well, hi there, everybody. I'm Ralph Pullins. I'm an author of Anti-Artist. I'm a member of the French Press pen name team, and then we also have Mike Hansen. He's right there with the sweet high and tight.
Yeah.
I'm back. Where did I get lost at?
It was one of those awesome Frozen moments too, where you're just like,
yeah, like Max Headroom. Remember that?
Fantastic, fantastic.
Yeah.
Nobody screenshot that, I hope. Lord, us talking about mythical and fantasy creatures, and I'm probably making the worst Halloween-worthy face there. The first one of you that makes that into a meme, I'm keeping track. So how far did we get into the intro as far as what the article is about before I got booted off?
I think we did a little bit of introductions after you got kicked off, but you just started to kind of introduce the article and the headmaster. I'm not sure if we introduced his name and what school he was from, but you were discussing how the headmaster believes that books like Harry Potter and shows like Game of Thrones and the Game of Thrones books were damaging young minds and needed to be kept from kids whose brains were not fully developed yet.
Yeah, how crazy is that? I mean, absolutely crazy. So Scott gave a pretty good roundup there on the. So I just want to repeat this quote that I got kicked off on. So he says, I want children to read literature that is conducive to their age and leave these mythical and frightening texts for when they can discern reality and when they have first learned to love beauty. He says that these texts are mythical and frightening, deeply insensitive and addictive, and that children should be reading literature that reflects old-fashioned values. Who wants to start? Because this is crazy to me that anyone who's the headmaster at a school is going to say children shouldn't be reading. I mean, essentially that's kind of what he's saying, and then he's saying you need to read traditional literature, and he goes into talking about Shakespeare, which, you know, we'll, I guess, get into the irony of that in a little bit. So
traditional values, right? Shakespeare. For me, it's always been after reading this article, this kind of stuff always makes me angry. Where I'm like, are you seriously gonna if a kid wants to read anything at all, let them read it. Whatever it is, it doesn't matter if they want to read the encyclopedia or if they want to read, Harry Potter. It only makes sense if they want to read, let them read. It's I couldn't imagine saying okay, this thing that you're enjoying, this thing that you love, that you're really into, that's not good enough. We're gonna put this completely incomprehensible text in front of you and then force you to enjoy it. Which I mean, it doesn't make any sense.
Force a kid to read Shakespeare too soon, they will end up hating Shakespeare or any similar text. I think some of the works that he listed that would be good to read were completely off the wall difficult. You have to be really careful about, yeah.
Go ahead, Scott. You just broke up for a second.
Okay, yeah, so you have to be really careful about what you make a kid read and also what you keep a kid from reading, but this is up to the parents. The headmaster can make suggestions, but they have to be really careful about really going off like this and saying that these things will cause mental damage, because some parents will listen to someone who is supposedly an expert with children and with kids and with education, but you can't keep things that are actually encouraging kids to read, like Harry Potter. I mean, how many millions of kids became readers because of Harry Potter? So you have to be really careful, because I think the damage that could be done is much greater than any good this guy's trying to do.
Well, I mean, the sentiment is, I mean, it's a common theme that you see pretty frequently in like a lot of different areas where they're saying like, oh, this is like just uncultured, or we expect more from our young people or whatever. And like, to me, I'm like, I don't care if, I mean, kids, like, even with music or things like that, which I'm a super big snob about, you know what I mean? Like, so I'm like, oh, no, we're not listening to that. Let's listen to this other thing. But to me, it's like, if they like it, if it's got a good beat and they can dance to it or whatever, who cares, right? They're little. They're like kind of like testing out the waters. They're trying out things and seeing if they like it and if they don't like it. To me, it's like, just, if you want to listen to, I don't even know any pop songs at all. But if you want to listen to like some pop garbage or something, I don't know any of it. But if you want to, knock yourself out, right? Try it out. Like, we had this discussion earlier. My kid, for whatever reason, is into What's New Pussycat by Tom Jones. And it's terrible for everybody because we can't stop singing it and humming it or whatever. And I don't know, it's not a great song. It's not my style, but I'm just like, yeah, you know what? You're into music. Let's give it a whirl. You know what I mean? I mean, we monitor, we make sure things are age appropriate or whatever. Yeah. But, I mean, Tom Jones isn't going to hurt nobody.
Well, and the whole thing is, a lot of the Harry Potter, for example, has a lot of really great quotes about being unique to yourself and being true to yourself. And I won't read the quote that I read last time because I can't do the Hagrid voice, so I don't want to offend Harry Potter fans out there. But I think anybody that even looks at quotes, a lot of them come from Harry Potter. And that ship is sailing really quick. I'm losing my thoughts. But children right now, literacy rates, and the fact that they estimate that 1 in 4 adults will never open another book after they get out of school. So we're teaching our young kids by trying to tell them, oh, you can't read this. If it's something they enjoy, that, books are solely educational, and that takes a lot of fun out of reading and opening doors for kids.
Yeah. I was just going to say, when we had this discussion last time, it took me a while to get to this point, so I'll bring it up.
If you say Bridge to Terabithia, so help me, Mike.
No. I will not. I won't talk about Terabithia. Maybe my girl, but not Terabithia. No, the fact that a headmaster is trying to censor these kids from newer stories that honestly I feel like he hasn't read. But he wants to get into this classical literature because it instills values in him. But, since Shakespeare, and since before Shakespeare, we'll even go back to Homer, there's only been 7 kinds of stories that you can tell. Not a whole lot changes throughout, that 500 years of storytelling. They all use the same components. They all use the same tricks. It's just a matter of style.
Yeah, and with like the...
Sorry, go ahead, Scott.
Yeah, I think we mentioned this once before we were talking about this, that I think that Harry Potter story really is the Christian story. I mean, it is the story of good and evil. and in that way, it's I don't know, maybe encouraging, and maybe a story that a lot of times you hear the ultra-conservative Christians kind of hate the Harry Potter story, but really they should be embracing it because it's just another way of telling the good and evil story.
I agree, and the reason that I agree with you on that is because I was raised in a real Christian household where my mom to this day, hi Mom, I think she might be watching, but my mom to this day will not watch Harry Potter, or read Harry Potter, and we were limited to what we could watch. Like, we couldn't watch Scooby-Doo, the Smurfs, things like that, because they dealt with witchcraft. But then when I started to read Harry Potter, it wasn't anything that made me feel like, oh my God, this is just so unethical. So I think there's a big difference between fantasy and crossing the boundaries of ethics and saying, read this book and your child's going to turn into like a mass murderer. So this headmaster, he's from the Acorn School in London, he actually says that these books are dark demonic literature sprinkled with ideas of magic, control, and of ghostly frightening stories. And when he said that, all I can think about is like Hamlet. So he wants kids to read Shakespeare, and I'm going, how is it, like Mike said, how is it any different of a story than what he wants to teach them? Just, it's not, wherefore art thou?
Well, it always seems to me, I've read it. Yep, sorry, go ahead, Scott.
No, go ahead.
I think this happens.
I was just going to say it.
Oh, geez.
We have that 2 or 3 second delay. So.
Yeah. So I think it happens a lot, and I think it comes from a place. I think it comes from a place of fear, where like things become too compelling to children. You see that your kids are like get too into things or get very excited about things. I mean, there was a family next door to me when I was like in 4th or 5th grade that like they had their kids like stop watching Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles or engaging with that in that way, and it came from a place of fear, and it came from like that they were like, I don't remember. I mean, even He-Man when I was a little kid, like there was like I got kicked off of He-Man for a while too, because like Skeletor had like the goat head on his staff or whatever. And I think it just happens when things become too popular that it sort of frightens people that this is going to be the thing that like finally turns kids, to the devil or something. It happens. I've seen it with Pokemon, and we've mentioned this before with Dungeons and Dragons. My mom wouldn't let me play Dungeons and Dragons and I didn't even know what Dungeons and Dragons was until she brought it up because she heard about it on some radio program or something.
Yeah.
And then I went and found it. After that, with my brother and I, we went to the library and checked out some books to find out what it was. And I think that's another like issue, like where you tell kids they can't do something, maybe they're going to go and seek it out. They're like, wow, this sounds really interesting. You don't want us to check it out. Hey, maybe it's reverse psychology. Maybe the guy's a genius.
Yeah, I think we talked about that.
There's a really interesting.
We wish somebody would ban our books. Yeah.
Yeah.
This delay.
Here comes some dead air.
So I was just going to say real quick on that topic, Ralph, there's a fascinating book out called Subculture, and it's by an anthropologist named Dick Hebage, or Hebditch. I can't remember if the D comes before the I or not. But he talks about how anytime anything challenges society, first they try to push it out, and then they try to make it normal and kind of turn and cultivate it to where, I mean, you see this a lot with things like Hot Topic or the punk movement, the Sex Pistols, Johnny Rotten. And so I think it goes along what you were saying with like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and things like that. So by him telling people, your kids shouldn't read this, and children are probably going to be like, oh, Mom, I want to read this. And then they're going to sneak and buy it and read it anyway, which I fully support. I'm not going to turn down anybody's buying book. So that's all. Sorry, Scott.
That's a really interesting idea, like that the idea of like normalization, right? That they make, like you can't control things, so why not just sort of try and vanillify it? That's not a word, vanillify. But that's good. But that makes sense. Like, why not try and just sort of, water it down and make it sort of okay. And then you get, like, Avril Lavigne.
Man, if she's watching, she's going to be so mad at you.
I know. I'm probably going to get an angry email, like, later tonight. Avril Lavigne's going to be like, damn it, Ralph. I'm legit. We got called out on YouTube. I think, we've talked about this too before. Oh, go ahead. Sorry. I like to hear myself
just
talk.
saying, so much of this, it really does come back to the parents having to know their kids. And we talked about how you will not, Ralph, you will not let your kids watch the Dark Knight Batman movies, but I took my kids to see Batman and Superman, which was even more violent, because I know where my kids' limit is, and they're okay with it, and that stuff doesn't freak them out, but you know your kids. So it's not up to a headmaster to decide what your kids can read or watch and what my kids can read or watch. It's up to the parents knowing what your kids are ready for. There's so many great movies and books and music that I want to introduce my kids to, but I know when to do that. Some movies I'm going to wait until they're 13. I'm not going to show them A Clockwork Orange while they're 6. But
right.
At 16, yeah.
Speaking to that point, last time we spoke, Dion brought up the fact that there was one time that I was at Barnes & Noble with the family. I picked up my standard next Vonnegut book I want to read, and then, I was walking with my daughter who's getting pretty good at reading. She just finished the 2nd grade. And then I was texting Dion, and I was asking her about Harry Potter because I wanted to find a book, that is age appropriate for her, but I also want to push her limits as a reader and just, get her to keep reading and reading and reading. I was looking at, all the old books that I read as a kid. I won't bring them up to see if she was ready for those. But yeah, we just got on that conversation, and it ultimately came down to me being maybe she needs to wait a year or maybe 2 years just to be ready for it. But I made that decision. But at the same time, I wanted her to get a book that she could just keep going and going and going.
Because there are some frightening parts in Harry Potter as the series progresses. You've got, the death of some beloved characters, and you do have some challenging moments, but it's so relatable for the kids, and it teaches them that life doesn't necessarily always have a happy ending, and that there's going to be challenges, and the importance of friendship, because these 4 main kids go through everything together, and they stick by each other, and they support each other. And so I can't imagine seeing those underlying lessons as being potentially dangerous for young minds. That is really what kind of frustrates me about this whole scenario, is you have these amazing books that can be related to, that teach great moral and ethical pieces, and then he's just saying, no, let's, teach, throw that out. And last time we got on the subject of banned books, too. Like, so once you say that something is bad or banned, you're going to start more.
Well,
and it's 7 o'clock in the morning for me, and this is just not working quite right yet. So.
Well, it seems to me like we spoke about this earlier, where I was like, please do me a favor, get a copy of my book, right? Try and get it into your kid's preschool for all I care, and then give it to No, do not put it in the preschool. What I'm saying though is show it to your local clergy, right? Let's get some write-in campaigns. Let's get this thing banned. Because man, there's nothing more compelling. I mean, especially for me and my, my whole style is there's nothing more compelling than someone telling me I can't do something. I'm like, all right, let's give that a whirl. That sounds fantastic. If you don't want me to do it, there's obviously something very interesting happening there. I'm like, I would love to get my book banned. So you guys make this happen.
Excellent marketing strategy on that one.
Absolutely.
I'm trying to find this other quote that he said. So he said that children are innocent and pure at the same time, and they don't need to be mistreated by cramming their imagination that lies deep within them with inappropriate things. Beware the devil in the text and only choose beauty for young children. So again, he's saying that these books with cramming imagination, it's almost like he wants to stifle imagination, and we're in an age where it kind of feels like kids might not have that imagination as much because they don't play as much, and they don't, like Legos aren't as cool necessarily as the iPad or the newest app. So why would you want to suggest anything related to stopping the flow of imagination?
Yeah, speaking from my experience, I just, Scott's right. But anything I could do to get my kids to be imaginative, I want that. You have to put your screen time limits on them if you choose to even let them have screen time. And then, fortunately, my son, he loves Legos. He doesn't, he'll build from the instructions once, and then after that, it's his own creation, which is, that's awesome to me. And then, my daughter's sitting in her room playing in her Barbie house, just having a conversation and, going to town. And, for me, I love that. So for someone to say, these kids are getting too many damn ideas from reading, maybe it's time to stop that. That just makes no sense.
Are you kidding me? I mean, seriously, I don't care what you're reading. If you're reading the back of the cereal box, or if you're reading anything, who cares? You're putting words in front of your face, your eyes are scanning them, your brain's working, it's creating pictures in your mind. It's amazing. It's magical.
That was pre-internet reading.
Could you imagine trying to, my kid wants to read something, he can read it. And that's one of our things is if the kids want something, it's always a yes for books. You want to buy books? Yeah, we'll go. There's always a yes. Well, also, too, because I like to get it to a bookstore.
I was just remembering when, Mike, I think it was your kids, they asked if they could read your book, and you were like, no.
Yeah, my daughter asks me all the time. I'm just like, nope, you're going to have to wait a few years.
Yeah. Well, it's about being responsible, right? I'm not going to... I told my kids they can't read my stuff until much later when, the themes will be at least relevant to them, and obviously there's language and subject matter in there that's not appropriate for children. It's not... I wouldn't let them watch A Clockwork Orange, like you said, Scott. That's silly. They're just not... I don't want to expose them to that kind of stuff quite yet. If I want them to be depressed, I'll let them watch the news.
Yeah. I think it's interesting in this article too that they compare Harry Potter to the Hunger Games to Game of Thrones, because I would never let Game of Thrones be viewed by. I'm late 30s, and sometimes it makes me a little uncomfortable. And I can see Hunger Games maybe being a little bit more intense for some kids because it does deal with death, and while older people and older children might be able to realize the political undertones to the book, somebody who's too young might just see a bunch of kids killing each other, and that might be traumatic. So I can see where parents really do have to have this role. And I don't have children yet, so I don't know exactly how I'm going to censor them and what I'm going to allow them to read. But what other series can you guys think of that has really impacted you that might fall under this umbrella of books that this headmaster is saying that children should not be allowed to read? Because I'm thinking of some things like Nancy Drew when I was younger. That could even fall into this category.
Well, he mentioned specifically Terry Pratchett in the Discworld books, which just absolutely brilliant. He mentioned it specifically because he's English. He's an English writer. He's actually got a knighthood. But he's a genius, and his writing is full of object lessons and political commentary and satire. They're really funny. They're goofy, and it's nothing but just 100% a mirror of our own experience. It's set in a fantasy world, but it's a mirror of our own experience, and it's relatable because of that. And I got to tell you, if a teacher told my kid that he couldn't watch or read Terry Pratchett or Harry Potter or any one of these books or Neil Gaiman or anything like that, I would be like, we're finding a different school because you don't have my kid's best interest in mind. It's nuts.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and it's important to understand what's fantasy and what's real. And again, that's where the parents and even teachers need to explain that, hey, this is fantasy, this is fun, but here's what the real truth behind that fantasy. Here's the real truth behind this story. I go back to the Harry Potter really is the Christian story. So you can, if you want to go in that direction, you can take it in that direction, or you can just simply go with the morals and the value, and you can talk about friendship and loyalty and doing the right thing, and everything's against you and those sorts of things. So yeah, I mean, it's important that the parent or the guardian takes the right lesson from these things. So, with kids, you're raising adults, you're raising future adults. So you want to use any lesson you can find to help make future good adults. You're not raising kids, you're raising future adults. And you take any lesson you can get. You don't isolate them because they'll have to figure out tough lessons on their own, one way or the other. So you try to protect your kids sometimes, or people try to protect all kids sometimes, and they try too hard. So I don't think that this is a bad person trying to ban these books. I think he's just trying to protect kids, but he's going about it the wrong way. And if he was successful, what would happen is you would have a whole bunch of kids who went out into the world at 17, 18 years old and would make a lot of really big, bad mistakes.
Well, yeah, and one thing I know for sure for myself is, I still do it now, is reading is an escape from actual real events. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like, if life feels a little bit heavy, you can pick up a book and sort of check out for a little bit and experience the world through someone else's eyes. You can step away from real awfulness for a little moment, and it'll give you a break. I mean, I don't know. The thing is, like, it's tough being a kid. You forget, like, when you get older, like, you have all these defenses and all these mechanisms in place to, like, sort of fend off the realities of the world. But when you're a kid, all that stuff's not necessarily there. You know what I mean? You haven't developed all your armor yet. And man, it's important to be able to just, like, escape for a little bit. I don't know. That's me.
Yeah. And the kid will never be able to escape reading Shakespeare. They're not going to get it. Yeah.
Well, yeah.
Keats,
I mean, hell, I don't really like. I mean, you know what? Obviously, some people really get down like that. I don't pick up Shakespeare to read for fun. You know what I mean? I did my required reading in school, but I don't pick it up and just, like, read it. I mean, I haven't since high school.
I
think Shakespeare's great. I think but you got to pick it up at the right time, and by saying that a kid should read Shakespeare instead of Harry Potter just doesn't make any sense. It's a quick way to make a kid hate Shakespeare. And maybe that's what happens sometimes. Yeah.
I think that ties into what Ralph says, where he says that he reads for an escape. And so when you're forcing children to read only what you think that they should read, especially as an academic influence in their life, where children are taught that your teachers and your professors and your principals are people that you should respect and honor and obey, then you're just kind of teaching them that reading isn't fun. So you have to let them have that escape and teach them that they can have that escape. I mean, books are great.
Yeah. Books are great, people. You should buy them.
Buy our books.
Yeah.
All right, so we're gonna go ahead and close this down now. So this was our first episode of the Author Roundtable, and we're going to be doing these every Wednesday night live on Google+, and they'll stream live to YouTube. You'll see some of our different authors coming in, but go ahead and continue the conversation. So you can continue it with us on Twitter at FP Bookworks, or you can continue it with any of the authors as well. So I'm going to let them run down the line, introduce themselves one by one, tell you about their book, and let you know how you can contact them directly to keep the conversation going or learn more about their books. So we'll start with you, Mike.
All right. Mike Hansen. I'm the author of When Life Hands You a Lemon. You can get that on the French Press Bookworks website. My website, which is www.fattyhansen.com. It's FATTYHANSEN. You want to keep talking to me? Twitter. It's usually probably the best way to get a hold of me. At Fatty Hansen. Same on Instagram. I have a Facebook author page as well.
Well, Ralph, your photo popped up, but we'll go next to Scott because he's next in line. So go ahead and introduce yourself, Scott.
Okay, I'm Scott Thompson. I'm the author of 8 Days. You can go to my website at authorscottthompson.com, and I have a contact form at authorscottthompson.com, as well as links to other things like my Facebook page. And Facebook is a good place to talk to me. It's facebook.com/ScottThompsonAuthor. And I like using Facebook because it's a great way for us to communicate and share ideas and make sure everybody sees those. So look for me there.
You get more than 140 characters on that one, so that's good. All right, Mr. Ralph.
All right, I am Ralph Pullins. I'm the author of Anti-Artists. You can get that on the Pen Name Publishing website. I'm also on Amazon or whatever. Anywhere you buy books, you can order it. And if you can get it banned, that would be spectacular. Just let me know if you do. Also, I'm on Twitter at @RDPullins. And that's kind of where I'm more active. That's sort of my main outlet. I like it because of the brevity. And I have a Facebook. I don't really like it as much as Twitter. And I accept all friend requests. So if you want, try and friend me. That's not to say I will not mute you almost immediately, but I will be a friend. And that's that. I also have a website. It's ralphpullins.com, and that is a bit of a work in progress, so please bear with me.
So all three of these websites are really great examples of author websites. If you're struggling with your author website and you want to see what some authors are doing, they're all individually branded in really neat ways, from Mike to Scott to Ralph, and they all have their own style. So definitely check it out, open up a conversation with them or with us, and then we will see you next week here on the Author Roundtable. Thanks, have a great night. Thanks, guys.
Thank you. Bye, guys. Have a good night.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.